All right, thank you very much for our attendees for joining. My name is Shinjin Kahler, Senior Account Executive at Channel Bakers, and our co-host for the day is Gary Huang. He is the founder and host of the Seven Figure Seller Summit that Channel Bakers is very happy to be sponsoring in April. And today, this webinar is really intended for us to explain to you the benefits for expanding out into Japan and selling on Amazon if you still have not, and to also give you some tips and tricks into being successful to sell on Amazon in Japan. So I'm going to first toss it over to Gary to get started on the topic of why you should be selling in Japan.
Thank you so much, Shinjin and Channel Bakers, for having us on. Greetings from Tokyo. I hope everybody is doing well. And I also like to thank Channel Bakers for sponsoring the Seven Figure Seller Japan Mastermind. Today, I wanted to first give you guys an overview about why, as Amazon sellers and e-commerce sellers, you should consider Amazon Japan. I don't know if we have the chat box enabled. I'm just curious, like if people are watching, are people able to chat? To like enter comments, Shinjin and team?
They should be, yes.
Okay, I'm just curious if anyone is selling in Japan, if you can just write yes in the chat. Like I just want to do like a quick informal survey, like how many people out there are selling in Japan, before we get into the reasons why. And just a quick overview, introduction of myself. I'm from the US originally. The first product I sold online was back on eBay in 2005. They were a pair of women's shoes. So that's how I got started. And my background's the intersection of e-commerce and sourcing and supply chain. I also, in my prior career, I worked as a sourcing and supply chain consultant in Shanghai for over a decade, and currently we're based in Japan. And I am an Amazon seller myself as well. And I was able to sell on Japan without really speaking the language. So I feel like if someone like me can do it, I think a lot of you guys out there, you should definitely consider the opportunity as well. Shinji, do we have any chat responses? If you can let me know, otherwise we can go into the screen share. Let me know.
Yeah, the chat is currently disabled, so we will work towards getting it. Yeah, and then hopefully,
no worries.
We can have everybody write their questions down if they have any throughout the session.
Definitely. Okay, should I go into the presentation now?
Yeah, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so first off, Shinjin has prepared a super value-driven presentation about how to localize your listings to sell into Japan. And Shinjin and I, we were having a chat before, and I think it will be also very valuable to explain the reasons why sellers should consider selling in Japan. Because I know most sellers out there are not selling in Japan, and most people don't even have Japan on the radar. So I wanted to share a couple of really important and very timely reasons why, as e-commerce sellers and brands, we should consider Japan, and specifically Amazon Japan. Okay, so the first reason is in terms of the supply chain, in terms of sourcing. Everyone has seen on the news, the whole shipping fiasco going on in the Suez Canal, the Red Sea. There's literally Houthi pirates firing rockets, missiles at container ships. And this is causing a huge disruption all over the world, even if you're not shipping into Europe, because it has a ripple effect on the entire supply chain in terms of the ocean freight rates, the container costs are 2x, 3x, even 4x since December. And you can see from this graphic, the Flexport Baltic Index. This is from, if you're shipping a container from East Asia to North America, West Coast, Long Beach, literally, the container prices are they continuously shoot up. This was taken in about a month and a half ago. So right now, now's the time to really optimize your supply chain as we're, heavily going forward into 2024. And for supply chain, practitioners, like a lot of people here in the room, there's a saying, the real money is actually made in the buying, not just the selling, right? It's how much you can source the product for, how much you can land the product for, and that includes the shipping, it includes the tariffs, the duties, and also the lead time, right? So keep that in mind as we are going through this whole fiasco. So, containers, they're, instead of routing directly through the Suez Canal, they're getting diverted all the way south of Africa, past the Cape of Good Hope, up back into Europe. And this also has a ripple effect on the delays going all over the world. All right. So in terms of that, I just wanted to highlight Japan. I think it's as simple as just looking at the map, guys, because if you're sourcing from China, which most people are, if you look at Japan, Japan's China's neighbor. So literally they're right next to each other, and the US is over here. So, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, getting a container on a ship from China to Japan, because it's so close, it could take as few as 7 to 10 days, whereas from China to the US, it takes 30 to 45 days, right? So if you're e-commerce brand owner, think about the implications on how much inventory you have to hold. This can really free up your cash flow, because you can turn the inventory a lot faster with the shorter lead times if you consider selling into a country like Japan, which is very close to your source. And this is, it's also very close to Vietnam, other Asian countries as well. So that's point number one. Japan has very efficient logistics. And point number two is in terms of the marketplace. Japan is the fourth biggest Amazon marketplace in the world, is the fourth biggest economy in the world. And Amazon is the number one e-commerce platform in Japan. Like here in Tokyo, you can literally see the Amazon delivery guys, with their little minivans, running through the different neighborhoods. Like literally there's same day shipping, there's next day shipping. It has coverage all over the country with 126 million people. E-commerce is also forecast to grow continuously in Japan. But another big point that most sellers are not aware of is the level of competition. There's actually not that much in terms of number of sellers in Japan compared to the other countries in the world. So a recent study showed that in terms of the number of sellers in Japan, it's ranked number 8 in the world. And the competition level is a lot weaker, it's a lot less sophisticated. So this means that if you are one of the ones that are selling in Japan, that means that you have less competition to go against. So it's literally, informally, I polled some of our audience members, about 230 audience members of e-commerce sellers. And Japan, only 13 people out of 230. That was like 5.7%. So literally, Japan's the fourth biggest Amazon marketplace in the world that almost nobody is selling in, right? So I just wanted to show you guys an example of the low level of competition, right? So in the Amazon world, people say the riches are in the niches. You really have to niche down to like a very niche product. You can't just sell like a yoga mat, right? But in Japan, we did a side-by-side comparison, keyword research, thick yoga mats, Amazon.com US search result, the bestseller, versus Amazon Japan, the best search result, the number one bestseller. So you can see in Japan, the competition is very low. Okay, on the left side, you see US, the number one bestseller for thick yoga mat has 4.6 stars, 75,632 reviews. Okay, that's a very saturated niche, super competitive, right? In Japan, same keyword in Japanese, thick yoga mat. This is the best seller, guys. 3.9 stars, 373 reviews. Think about that. I mean, you don't have to be the best seller in the world to compete against like weak competitors like this, right? 3.9 stars. If you come in with like 4.3 stars, 4.4 stars, and another cool thing about Japan is if you're already selling in the US, you can carry over your reviews. So if you're selling a yoga mat with 500 reviews, there's a fairly good chance you can unseat the bestseller, very quickly from day one. Okay, so I hope that this helps you guys understand the opportunity out there with the big market, with the low level of competition, guys. Okay, this also translates to lower PPC and advertising costs. Everyone knows that advertising costs are through the roof. Amazon has become a pay-to-play game, right? In Japan, however, in a study done last year, with the lower level of competition, there's fewer people bidding. So you're getting average cost per clicks as low as 29 cents per click. Okay, so obviously it depends on your keyword and your product category, but on the whole, the ad cost, the ad spend will be lower in Japan. And last but not least, everyone has seen recently Amazon has created a brand new fee stack, right? In terms of inbound placement fees, low inventory level fees, aged inventory surcharge fees, right? Recently, we invited a specialist to come in to do a side-by-side comparison of the Amazon fees for the US versus Japan. And across the board, the fees in Japan are significantly lower. The inbound placement fees, they don't exist in Japan. So you don't have to worry about which FC to ship it into. I mean, Japan, because it is a smaller country, even though it's the fourth biggest market, you don't have to worry about these additional fees. Lower level inventory fees, you can see you can carry lower levels of inventory. In the US, you need 0 to 28 days, and you're getting charged 32 cents to $1.11. In the US, it's only 0 to 14 days. So you can keep less inventory. You'll be charged lower fees as well, 4 cents to 20 cents. And also age inventory surcharge, US 181 days age, 50 to $6.90 per cubic foot. In Japan, you won't get hit until 271 days and $1.72 to $4.53. So you can see across the board, the fees in Japan are lower. It's a big market. And, I think it's kind of ridiculous that almost nobody is talking about selling in Japan. That's why I'm very excited about the opportunity today. And Shinjin will give a more in-depth overview of how you can localize your listings. And we also have a special opportunity at the end for you guys to learn more. So thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Gary. So as he had just gone over, there is a huge opportunity in Japan to expand your business from a foreign country into the region. And in doing so, there are a lot of challenges. And one of the major ones is to be optimizing your content, which would resonate well with the local consumer. So today I do want to review some of the best practices. It's only the tip of the iceberg because you will learn more at the event that we have organized in April. But I do want to review some of the very simple things that you could implement very quickly. So I'm hoping that we can all see this well. Gary, can you give me a thumbs up? Awesome. So just want to start off with some statistics to get a better understanding of the Japanese consumer. So this is a survey conducted by eBay, but it gives us an idea of how the Japanese consumer shows a willingness of purchasing foreign items. So 28% of Japanese consumers have purchased a product from a foreign online retailer in the past year. And on top of this, 1 in 3 shoppers have said that they have considered purchasing an imported item, but they actually hesitated. And so, this gives you 2 different perspectives of the Japanese consumer where they still do show an interest, but there is still a sense of hesitancy with this. And so if you were to rephrase these numbers, it tells you that 60% of Japanese shoppers are in fact interested in purchasing an imported item, but there are still some hurdles that we have to overcome. And so as a foreign seller, you do need to make sure that you are doing your best to gain credibility and the confidence of Japanese consumers. So I can, in Japanifying your content, I've kind of come to the conclusion that there's 2 major factors that make it important to where you have to be Japanifying your content. And one of the biggest factors here is that Japan has a very unique culture. And this really impacts the customer's decision on what products they'd be purchasing. So as I'm half Japanese and half American, and I've lived in Japan for a very long time. I've lived in the US for a long time as well. So I've had both perspectives, and I do want to share some of my experiences here. I say that Japan is a country that is very, very sensitive to language. And growing up in Japan, you notice and realize that there's a power dynamic in every single conversation that you have. And in conversation, in words, written words, you can very much tell whether you're talking to somebody either that's older or younger, whether they have your respect or not. And as a company selling products to a consumer, there's this idea that the customer is always right. The customer is going to naturally have your respect. And so you do have to make sure as an action item that you're selecting a tone that is remaining consistent within every single aspect, whether it be in your ad units, in your product detail pages, brand stores, A+ content, so that you're always making sure that you're gaining the credibility, trust of that shopper and not offending them. Another part of Japanese culture is that it's a very high context culture where not everything that you say and can imply is expressed through words. there are certain aspects within communication, such as body language, that can imply many different things. And this kind of goes back to the power dynamic that's available, or that is in Japanese culture. So having all of your content reviewed by a native speaker is going to be important. You can rely on tools like ChatGPT, Google Translate, but there's only so much and so far that can go and take you, where you don't have to necessarily speak Japanese, but it is essential for everything to be double checked by a local speaker. And finally, within Japanese culture, Japan is a very collectivist society where, if I were to raise some examples within daily life, people don't necessarily want to be, the person that sticks out. A lot of things that we do, we go and do together. Like I can imagine, people want to buy products that have already shown popularity, kind of like we're seeing in the US with influencer culture, but something like that has been around in Japan for a very, very long time. It goes very far to include messaging within your content that implies popularity. So those are things like, our product has been ranked #1 in different magazines. People that review products in a certain industry gave us the #1 mark. Those things can really benefit your product detail pages and is a major part in Japanifying your content. So all of this leads into my next point, which is to gain credibility as a brand. And you can do this through the content that you create, whether it be your ad units or through the product detail pages that you optimize on Amazon. Credibility in this instance can be many things, but especially for foreign sellers, a foreign brand, it's important to consider what can make a Japanese shopper hesitate to purchase from you. And in surveys, what we find is that this concern over foreign products being fake. Japan is a culture where not everybody can speak English. Actually, it's one of the Asian countries that have the lowest, ability to speak English. So aside from things being fake, they're also concerned that if they wanted to return a product or work with customer support, they won't be able to communicate with them. And so, they're also concerned whether their orders will actually arrive, just due to the fact that, foreign companies are just things that we don't run into in our daily lives. So this can be overcome within your content by making sure that you're showcasing the fact that you are an official imported item, and including that in your title can help you gain credibility. I would also suggest including a return policy within your bullet points. I know on Amazon, it is pretty reliable that you will be able to return your items, but if you're an obvious foreign brand selling foreign products, then that can definitely help gain the discerning Japanese consumers' trust. And so, we can also, I want to think of some of, the improvements that we can make to our own product detail pages through kind of working backwards and thinking about what Japanese consumers are looking for within a detail page so that we can effectively communicate with them, and whether it be communicating your brand message or your KSPs for your product. And in doing so, I think one of the things that I do want to tell you about Japanese culture and the things that are available in Japan is that we do have these one-pagers, which we see everywhere in Japan, and this is called a chirashi. And essentially what it is it's a very cheap form of marketing. And when you're walking around town, there are people working part-time jobs, handing them out to pedestrians. I think, Gary, you might be able to agree, but if you go a week without checking your mailbox, you're going to find 50, 60 pieces of paper where you have to sift through, your bills that are actually important and ads that you don't want to see. But this is a Rakuten Chirashi. And so a large Japanese e-commerce platform, but they also send out chirashi to consumers to give them a visual aid on the discounts that they have running. I think as characteristics, these are normally, very colorful. very eye-catching, and there are tiny pieces of text that supplement the major points that you're seeing. So right here, for example, they're selling Dyson air purifiers, and it says, it's on discount for 26,000 yen, but right here, it's also including aspects of what you would see as a bullet point on product detail pages. So to a Western audience, you might think that there's too much going on. Like, I just want to see a picture, a call to action, and where I need to find more information. But Japanese people are very used to consuming this much information at a time. And there's also the fact that, because there are so many chirashi, like you can't walk through Shibuya without looking a certain direction without seeing an ad. So because the Japanese consumer is so used to seeing so many ads that we're kind of desensitized to advertisements, and just seeing a picture is not going to make us take action. We need to see all the information that's available for us to actually show interest. And so understanding this, it can give you an idea of some of the mistakes that people make when trying to optimize their detail pages or creating ad units. And the first one here, contrary to what a chirashi would be like, is to add insufficient detail. Like I mentioned, we're pretty desensitized in Japan with what we see within ads. So it's very important for us to be able to learn at first glance, the different product specs, features, things that I would learn or get from a specific service if I were to take action. And so, to a non-Japanese consumer, it may be a little too busy, too much going on a specific page. It's easier to learn through visual aids. All relevant information, non-Japanese consumers will prefer it to be concisely organized above the fold. And, maybe I can learn more on a different page. And then if you look at an Amazon brand store, for example, you see, the effectively created brand store pages have everything organized into very different sub pages, and they just go to a specific page where they want to learn more about a specific product. However, in Japan, the content above the fold should want to make shoppers continue to read about the product. And that's where all the product specs, the important pieces of information that they have to know, are actually written down, not just through pictures. And, some of the things that I mentioned earlier, whether it be the voice of the customer, the above the fold content should really be used to gain credibility and to actually encourage shoppers to continue learning more about the product. And so as a solution, I like to look at Amazon products that they sell in very different regions as kind of a starting point. And it's really cool to see the differences in terms of how they make their content by different regions. So I used an Echo Dot example here. This is the A+ content on the Echo Dot PDPs. But what you'll see here in Japanese is that, although it does take more text sometimes to explain certain things in Japanese, you'll see that in the English content, it just briefly mentions how the sound quality is better bass than the earlier products. But in the Japanese version, there's very specific information that's included. Like, for example, there's a 10% larger 44 millimeter speaker, right? Like, that doesn't mean much to me as a shopper, but there are specific pieces of information included here, which may be relevant to a shopper that's actually very curious. In the English version, a lot of the information is included in the Learn More page, but there are basic specs here, like I mentioned, before going to the Learn More page. And I think what's really important between the two pieces of text that gives you an idea of the cultural differences between Japan and the Western world is that the Japanese version does not use pronouns, whereas in the US, it is written in second person, I believe. It says, enjoy a dynamic audio experience anywhere in your home, right? That creates more of a personable tone. Whereas in Japanese, it's quite frank in the way that it's written, but that's, in this instance, is the tone that Amazon decided to use, and they keep that consistent among their different product detail pages. So this is an effective example of how Amazon has Japanified their content. One other mistake, contrary to there being a need to have as much information on a PDP as possible, it is quite, I do find a lot on Amazon that there are just large blocks of text included in a product detail page. So although this has SEO benefits where you're including as much keywords in your detail pages as possible, it is still possible for people to scan through the text to find relevant information. But simply put, I think there's just too much going on here. So an easy fix for this is also, a best practice in the US as well, but it's the same in Japan. Make sure that your KSPs are included at the very beginning within just brackets. That can go a long way to help the shopper scan through the different, elements of the bullet points so that they can find the information that they need. The Japanese characters that are being used here really makes it easy to scan through the content because Japanese people can read kanji, and that's a Chinese character that has specific meanings to a certain text. So it's very easy. Japanese is a very easy language to scan through. So your bullet points can be long, but you're going to need to highlight specific points that are discussed in each bullet point so that it's easier for shoppers to find the information they need. Now, one thing that I do want to bring up is the use of emojis. This is an extremely gray area on Amazon, and what you'll find in Japan is that a lot of product detail pages include emojis. That was one thing that I was surprised once I started to work on Amazon Japan. My answer to this is yes and no, just, due to the risk as well as the benefits that you get from it. I think they kind of even out. As a best practice, if you want to use emojis, is to keep in mind that Amazon's goal is to try to keep their product detail pages as simple as possible so that it gives the shopper the best experience as possible. If you're using multiple different types of emojis, multiple emojis, I think that can be a cause for your PDP to be taken down. Just simple checkboxes like the green one here, as well as, let's say, an X, that is something that could be approved. But I would imagine that if you use an emoji of, like, let's say, the person, creating a circle with his arms, or, if you're using multiple emojis within your PDP, so you're using a check mark, you're using an X, you're also using the picture of a person, that can make the content a little too busy and can be a reason for your PDP to be taken down. So yes, you can try to use emojis, but make sure that you're not testing during times, like Prime Day, when you can't risk your PDP being taken down because, you're just creating more problems for yourself at that point. And so then the third mistake here, just kind of going off similar topics that we brought up in the Chirashi conversation earlier. If you bring Western content straight into Japan, that can actually create less engagement from a Japanese consumer. And I've just taken screenshots of Rakuten US, so Rakuten.com and Rakuten JP's above the fold content. And what you can immediately notice is that Rakuten US's content is way more simple than what you're seeing in Rakuten Japan. And, even though these banners, they might be explaining the same things, right? The cashback banner here is super simple. You can see that there's one call to action button that says see stores. But over here, this is a banner for they've introduced new brands within the fashion category that shoppers can now purchase from. What you'll see here is that even though it's saying see stores, they don't include all the different brand logos that are available in the US. But in Japan, they have the brand logos, they have pictures of all the different types of clothing that you could buy. There's even a call to action about different coupons that are available, all above other banners that are talking about discounts and coupons that are available. So essentially, the takeaway here, which we'll talk about a couple more later, is to don't keep your content as simple as possible. And just in the, in considering the time that we've taken so far, I'm just going to gloss over this real quickly too. Within brand stores in the US, it is best practice to just use very simple call to actions, Try not to use as many bullet points, words as possible. Just use clean pictures, stick to the brand guidelines. But what you'll see here in Japan is that there's very specific specs being mentioned in your brand stores. Although we're using images, they're being supplemented with text and following the brand guidelines here. So I did review content in the idea of PDPs and brand stores, but now I do want to take a look at specific ad units that are being used in Japan versus the Western world through comparing some of the award-winning ad units. And in Japan, the highest prize that you can win for a banner ad, a billboard ad, is this Mainichi Newspaper Design Prize award. And the 90th award was handed out last year. And sorry for the low quality picture here, but this is an ad it's actually for an MSG brand. And the message here essentially is that, you can make homemade flavors from the MSGs that they use. It should remind you of what your mom used to cook, what your grandma used to cook. So it is using elements of a old-fashioned Japanese nuclear family. There's large pieces of text in Japanese here that says, "I'm home, welcome home." Right? So it incorporates elements of Japanese culture, makes it as homey as possible, but then there's tiny text right here that supplements all the info, or all the messages that they'd want to communicate through this ad unit. This is especially relevant in Japan because and a lot of ad units, just due to the fact that, like I mentioned, Japan, you can see advertisements anywhere that you go to in Japan. Trains have digital screens with advertisements on it, but they would also have paper banners in the different areas. So this is more so oriented for a place like maybe a train, where people riding the train would read the specific texts that are here for you to read while they're spending time on that train. So this is a very Japanese format of an ad that ads, if you choose to engage with the ad, you have the opportunity to, but you don't necessarily have to. And the content is very relatable to a Japanese audience. So I really like this next ad unit. This is the 2023 Cannes Lions Outdoor Ad Grand Prix, and British Airways won this campaign, or sorry, this award. But what you'll notice here is that this ad unit is very simple. There are elements of humor that come with it, because the weather sucks. I'm not traveling because I want to. But there's also no specific call to action here. And that's a trait that can be seen in a lot of ads compared to Japan, Western ads. And it's definitely much less noisy. So if you are considering advertising in Japan, or if you have ads that can be repurposed to be used in Japan, adding more detail is something that you can immediately do for your ads to be much more engaging in the region. I love McDonald's ads, by the way, as well. I think McDonald's is a great example for the different cultural elements that are being communicated. And I've specifically used this example because what I've noticed in McDonald's ads, both in the US and in Japan, is that in the US, it very much fixates and focuses on the price of the product. So, okay, in this instance, you get 2 for $5. And it also fixates on the thick patties and how much bacon you're going to get in your burgers. Like Arby's commercials come to mind immediately. Huge pieces of roast beef falling down from the sky onto a patty. But in Japan, a lot of McDonald's ad have a story that they're telling, and has a very specific context in Japanese culture in sending their message. What I see often is, in this instance, this ad unit says, you get double the patties, and you'll, also double the amount of stress that you'll be losing, right? So eat more, lose more stress is the message here. And it also features a picture of a Japanese, woman who's probably having lunch in between her work break. So, this does tell a story within the Japanese work culture. Another TV ad that I can just, add for your reference is that right now in Japan, they're selling a burger called the Samurai Mac, and it is targeted towards men in probably their 20s up to their 40s. And all of their ads are featuring, a Japanese salaryman who is exhausted from work, but he can relieve his stress through eating a Samurai Mac burger, and it has this alpha male messaging to it. So McDonald's has effectively incorporated Japanese culture into their advertising so that it is actually relatable to the Japanese consumer. Another one here, I think this also incorporates the simplicity, or it shows you the simplicity versus the busy, chaotic nature of Japanese ads. When McDonald's first introduced mobile ordering, they used cell phones to create images of fries and burgers, kind of like what you see here. This actually got a lot of attention at the time, and so it's even something that I remember to this day. But mobile ordering ads in Japan look like this. It's, a picture of somebody holding a cell phone, and there's more so of a message where you can save specific points or gain more points on a different app if you purchase from McDonald's online app. Japan is it's a culture where gaining points, saving points is very popular so that people can get discounts later on. So they've incorporated all the different details. So you get a 10% discount or a payback. Per one-time use, you can get up to 500, 1,000 points. All of the relevant details are included here. So I hope that this gives you a visual image of how ads are different based on different regions, so that then you can optimize your ad units as best as possible. So in terms of main takeaways here, your ad really has to be popping out, amongst all the different ads that are available that you see online or in person. So this often means large text, a lot of text in different colors, kind of following that idea of a chirashi culture. Your ad should tell a story, kind of like the McDonald's example that I gave you. Making it Japanese. I mentioned this in a forum where it's, use Japanese models. Make sure that your ads have if you're using a New York City skyline as your background for your ad, you should probably change that to a Shibuya skyline if you're going to be advertising in Japan so that it's more relatable. And make sure that as much detail is included within your ad units so that then it's giving people a reason to look deeper, look further into the service or the product that's being provided there. Right now, we don't have the chat opened up for you all, but we do have a Q&A section opened up. So please write any of your questions down in there. But while you all do that, I do want to toss it back to Gary to speak more of the 7-Figure Seller Summit that Channel Bakers is sponsoring in April 8th through 10th in Okinawa, Japan. So Gary, would you like to take over?
Thank you so much, Shinjin, and really like the examples you gave about McDonald's, Japan. I didn't know that it was such a thing to eat McDonald's if you're stressed from work. I guess that's a big cultural thing, and that's a good example how even a big brand like McDonald's has Japanified their ads. So also, I wanted to quickly thank Channel Bakers again for sponsoring 7-Figure Seller Japan Mastermind. So Shinjin covered a lot today about localization, Japanification, give you guys some flavors of kind of the things that you need to do to be successful in Japan. And if this is interesting to you, we would love to invite you to join us in our in-person conference in Japan, in Okinawa, Japan, April 8th, 9th, 10th. It will be held in Okinawa. This is a 3-day in-person event. So the main thing, like who is this for, is this is for brands and e-commerce sellers, especially if you're already selling, let's say in the US or already selling in Europe, because the beauty of Amazon Japan especially is, number one, you can carry over your SKUs if you can carry over your reviews. I wish we had the chat open because I wanted to ask you guys, maybe you can just mentally, ask yourself this. For your best-selling SKU, let's say in Amazon.com, think about how many reviews do you already have, right? It could be 300, it could be 800, it could be, maybe 2,000, right? Imagine if you were able to carry over those reviews from Amazon.com to Amazon Japan, right? Think about what sort of launch strategy that would boost your listing, right? I mean, that would, because in Japan, the average review thresholds are lower. So if you're coming in with those reviews immediately, that's going to increase your social proof. Like in Japan, as Shinjin mentioned, people kind of have that, they don't want to be the first person buying like a product with 0 reviews, right? So you already have the social proof. So this way, it's going to increase your conversion rates. It can drop your PPC. I mean, there's a host of other benefits as well. So we're really going to show you the roadmap, how you can sell up to $965,000 in Japan. Some of our speakers, they're 7-figure sellers, 8-figure sellers. They've actually helped brands achieve this in Japan, like a brand that, like you, that you're watching today. We'll also learn launch strategies and external marketing strategies native to Japan. There's certain social media apps that are native to Japan that basically every Japanese person is using, right? We're seeing people, one of the attendees that attended our event last year, he's a seller here in Japan, and he was able to build a list of over 7,000 customers, since the last event, just learning, from the strategies that he learned at the event. So these are some highlights from last year. Last year's event was in Tokyo. It was a 2-day in-person event. So we have 2 full days in classroom learning from speakers, including sellers, actual sellers in Japan, also import compliance specialists, localization experts, like channel bakers, and basically every step of the way. But on the 3rd day, we also have what we call a fun day. So this way you can get in the real world in Japan. It's going to be held in Okinawa. So we'll have certain activities that you can enjoy, including snorkeling. Okinawa is known as the Hawaii of Japan. So we really want to give you a balanced perspective of both in-classroom learning, how to sell in Japan, as well as the real world flavor of the Japanese culture. You'll see some of those ads, those billboards. We'll even take you to certain stores in Japan where you can literally see products on store shelves and seeing how your product would fit and what sort of localization the local products have. So I think that will be invaluable for sellers like yourself. So we'll have 2 full days. Conference April 8th to the 9th in Okinawa, and day 3 is the fun day with in Okinawa. All right, so I'd love to invite you guys to come join us. If you are interested, please check out 7figuresellerjapanmastermind.com to learn more. And also, I wanted to give another shout out to Channel Bakers, Shinjin, and the whole team for supporting our event. I think they're one of the key players to help you guys succeed in Japan. And I'd love to invite you to come join us if you want to learn more live and in person. All right, thanks so much. Can we drop the URL in the chat for people that are interested in learning more? Can I just put it in?
I think you should be able to.
Okay, I just put the URL in 7-Figure Seller Japan Mastermind if you want to learn more. We're only about a month away, and we do have a discount going on right now. There's pre-event pricing. I believe the discount will be available until March 15th, Friday. So make sure to take advantage of that while you still can. You'll get, I believe it's $300 off the ticket, right? Can we enable questions or what's next, Shinjin? Yeah,
there's a Q&A. There's a Q&A section within this Zoom meeting, and so
okay.
If there are any questions from our live audience, then please go ahead and throw them in there so that we can address them.
Excellent. Just one note about Chirashi culture. I really like that analogy. But for people that aren't familiar with Chirashi, can you explain what that is, just so people know? Shinji.
So a chirashi is, so my image of a chirashi is that the local grocery store is listing out all the discounts from Monday through Thursday. And like if it's fish that they're selling, this one's on discount, this is the freshest right now. And there's so many different sections on different products that they're selling. And like if you're, let's say, an insurance company, you may include many different elements of a character and try to promote the different, insurance plans that you have, right? And like to be honest with you, it's it's just something that's really annoying. But every now and then you come across a chirashi that actually grabs your attention, and
Hmm,
read through it and look through it. And so it's a very cheap way of reaching a broad audience. And every now and then you may get some action that comes out of it.
I see. You know, I'm all about food, Shinjin. I don't know about you, but when I hear chirashi, I immediately think of the chirashi, like the sushi bowl, like with all the seafood.
Right.
Because like if you go to like Tsukiji Fish Market, that stuff is like it's amazing, and literally like it's such a mess, right? But it's delicious. I mean, you have like the salmon, you have the uni, you have the tuna, you have like the crab, you have the octopus, right? It's like all thrown in there, and it's a mess, but it's really delicious, right? I think that's the perfect analogy for Japanese, like the type of advertising that people are used to, right? You have like all the facts, the information, and even if like, I have this like this box of wet naps from Daiso, right? You can see, it's there. Let me stop my screen. It's literally filled with like so much information on like, like a dollar product, right? You can see, it says, oh, you can, it's thick. It's, you can take it camping. You can wipe your table. You can wipe your refrigerator, right? It's like, there's like 30% alcohol. I mean, there's just like inundated with information, right? But, that's what, in a perfect example of chirashi, that's what they want, right? It's like that bowl, they want a little bit of everything. So, they can get that, the full picture or that satisfaction. So
I
I thought
think
that was a really good example. Yeah.
I think we have one question. So thank you for joining our session from us as well. But the question here is, if I'm selling products on Japan or Amazon Japan right now and want to grow that business, what would you recommend be the next steps coming out of this call? My answer would be join us in Okinawa on April 8th to 10th. But I would say that there's a lot of different, depending on your current circumstances, there's a lot of different ways to try to improve your business. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah. It's like how do you, it's like, how do you grow a business? There's like so many different ways. I mean, are you doing your marketing? Are you doing advertising? Could you localize your listing? Could you do like rank for more keywords? Could you, um, in terms of like your shipping, can you lower your landed cost so you can increase your profitability, right? I mean, can you work with external traffic? Could you get some influencers on YouTube, right? Could you build a list so it increase your lifetime value? Right? I mean, there's like so many different strategies, and the beauty of our event is we'll have 3 full days where we'll cover all of this. And if you have a question about localization, you can speak with Shinjin. He'll be there. If you have a question about import compliance, for example, we'll have a Unigate, their import compliance specialists. If you want to increase your profitability, there's going to be reimbursement experts, Getita, right? They'll hand out $500 in free reimbursements, right, for your Amazon listing. So literally, it's almost like we'll have an opportunity where you can sit down, you can get someone to look over your shoulder on your laptop at your business, and they can give you direct advice about your product. How you can optimize it better, how you can localize it. Maybe consider some product variations that would sell even better in Japan, right? Using keeping the parent SKU, right? So by the time you walk away from Okinawa, you'll know exactly what you need to do to get the ball rolling and to grow even more in Japan. So
Right.
that's what I think.
From the perspective of an ad agency, I think Gary brought up a really good point earlier. If you're not advertising yet, or if you are, already, I would really take advantage of sponsored ads just due to the fact that CPCs are much lower in Japan relative to other regions. So if you're, I think right now, from my experience, out of the three different ad types that you can use on sponsored ads, sponsored display is relatively cheap. Sponsored products, surprisingly, is very, very cheap. So I would identify the different keywords that can give you the opportunity to grow the amount of sessions that you're driving to your PDPs, so that then conversions would follow along with it. So that could at least be like a short-term improvement for you all.
Definitely. I hope that helps.
Of course. All right. Well, we're coming up at the very end of our session, so I do want to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, our attendees, for joining today. And for those that are located in the US, it must be quite late in the evening after work. So I very, very much thank you. And we are excited to see if any of you guys can join us in Okinawa in April.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Channel Bakers, for having us on, and good luck, everybody. Hope to see some of you guys in Japan, in Okinawa.
Great. Well, thank you. And we will be following up with some immediate actions that you can take and the 7 bridges that are available for you to consider while expanding into Japan. So please be on the lookout for that. All right, then thank you, everybody. We'll be ending the webinar.
Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.